You spot it creeping across a shady corner of your lawn, a soft green carpet of moss over the ground, and your first instinct is to scrape or rake it away. You worried it's smothering your grass and ruining the lawn, so every year you wage a quiet war against it. But here's what that moss is really telling you. It isn't the enemy, and it isn't killing your grass. In fact, it's quietly protecting something you can't see, and it's whispering a clear message about your soil. This soft plant is older and stranger than you'd guess, older than the flowers, older even than the dinosaurs. Today, you'll learn to read what your moss is saying, and you'll never reach for that scraper the same way again. Welcome back to What the Garden Knows, where your yard has been speaking, and we finally learned to listen. Let's begin by gently clearing up the single biggest myth there is about lawn moss. Almost everyone firmly believes the moss is creeping in and choking out their good grass. They picture it creeping in and strangling the healthy lawn. But the real truth of it is almost exactly the other way around entirely. Moss does not move into a thick, strong, thriving lawn. It simply cannot compete with healthy, vigorous grass at all. Moss only ever appears in the spots where the grass was already weak and struggling to grow. Think about exactly where you tend to find it in your yard. In the deep shade beneath a tree where little sun reaches, in the damp, low corner where the water never quite drains, on the hard, bare patch the mower has scalped too short. In every single one of those spots, the grass had already quietly begun to fail. It grew thin, weak, and patchy, leaving bare ground behind, and the moss is simply moving in to fill the empty, bare space the grass left behind.
So the moss is not the cause of your lawn's trouble at all. It is only a quiet sign of the difficult conditions that were already there. Scraping it away changes absolutely nothing underneath. The same shade, the same damp, the same hard soil remains, and so the moss simply returns. Again and again, season after season, every single year. It isn't an invader stealing ground from your healthy grass. It is really just a gentle squatter, quietly settling into a spot where the grass already gave up. But to truly understand this little plant, you have to look much closer, because moss is one of the strangest and oldest living things in your yard. If you've battled moss in your own lawn, tell me about it in the comments, and consider subscribing, because this tiny plant has an incredible story. Now, here's the second secret, and it reaches back in time almost beyond all imagining. Moss is one of the most ancient plants on the entire planet. It was among the very first plants of any kind ever to live on the dry land. Long before there were flowers or grasses or towering trees, mosses were already quietly carpeting the bare rock and the young, empty earth. They have been here on this earth for hundreds of millions of long years. They watched the very first forests rise up around them. They were ancient and old already long before the great dinosaurs ever walked the world. And they are still here today, soft and green beneath your feet. But moss is not just ancient, it is also wonderfully simple. It has no flowers of any kind, and it grows no seeds whatsoever at all. Instead, it quietly spreads itself using tiny dust-like specks called spores. And most surprising of all, true moss has no real roots. The plants you know all drink and feed through their roots.
But moss has none, and it lives in a completely different way. It has only tiny thread-like anchors that simply grip the surface to hold itself in place. It is one of nature's oldest and most patient survivors, a living fossil, quietly thriving in the corner of your yard, carrying quietly on, almost completely unchanged since the very dawn of life on land. The third secret follows straight from that strange, rootless life. Now, if the moss truly has no roots at all, then how on earth does it drink? Almost every other plant pulls all of its water up from deep down in the soil, but moss simply cannot do that, having no roots to reach down. So it does something remarkable and beautifully simple instead. It simply drinks the water straight in through its tiny leaves, directly from the very air. So when the rain falls or the morning mist settles, the moss simply soaks it all in. Each little leaf absorbs the water directly across its surface. It gathers moisture from the dew, the fog, and every shower. This is exactly why moss loves the damp and shady places. Those cool, shady corners stay just moist enough to keep its tiny leaves alive, and it's why moss dries out fastest in the open, sunny spots. It also takes its nutrients straight from the rain and dust. Tiny minerals settle on its leaves and are quietly absorbed. And so the moss needs no rich soil at all and no deep roots in order to live. It can grow on bare rock, on old walls, and on tree bark. Anywhere that stays damp enough, the moss can make its home. It is a plant that drinks the sky and asks for almost nothing. A whole quiet life lived simply on nothing but rain, mist, and a little drifting dust. If this little plant is beginning to amaze you, you're in good company.
Take a quick moment right now and tap that like button for me. It truly helps these quiet garden secrets reach more curious people. The fourth secret is perhaps the most astonishing of all, because moss can do something that would kill almost any other plant. It can dry out completely, right down to a crisp, and yet still not truly die. When the long, dry weather finally comes and there is no water left to drink, the moss does not wilt and perish the way grass would. Instead, it simply and quietly shuts its whole self down, and it waits. Its little leaves curl up, and it turns brown, crisp, and still. To your eye, the patch looks utterly dead and gone. You might even happily believe that you have finally, at long last, rid yourself of it. But the moss is not dead at all. It is only sleeping. It has paused its whole life, holding on deep inside. It can quietly wait like this for weeks, for many months, or even far longer than that. Patiently, quietly, it waits for the water to return. And then, at last, the rain begins to fall once more. Within minutes, something almost miraculous takes place. The dry, brown, crisp moss drinks the water deeply and swells right back to life. Its leaves unfurl, its color returns, and it glows green again. It has come fully back from what truly looked for all the world like complete death. Very few living things on earth can survive in this way. And this small, humble plant in your own yard is quietly, remarkably one of them. So it's ancient, it's rootless, and it can rise back from the dead. But the most important secret is what it's quietly doing for your yard. Stay with me, because moss is protecting more than you realize. The fifth secret is the gift this little plant gives the ground. That soft green carpet of moss is doing far more than just quietly sitting there. It is quietly protecting and holding the bare soil beneath it. Remember, the moss only grows in the spots where the grass has already thinned and failed. Without it, that bare ground would lie open and exposed. And bare, exposed soil is always soil in real danger, as you may well recall. When the rain pounds down on naked earth, it washes away, and the precious, dark topsoil runs off with the rain and is lost for good. But a carpet of moss shields the ground like a soft blanket. It gently softens the pounding rain and holds the bare soil firmly in its place. Its dense little leaves grip the bare surface tightly and stop it from washing and eroding away. Moss also acts like a living sponge, soaking up the water. It holds many times its own weight in moisture within its leaves, and then it releases all that stored water back out slowly, keeping the whole area cool and damp. On bare rock and ruined ground, moss is a true pioneer. It is very often the very first form of life to colonize a bare and barren place. And as it slowly breaks down over time, it begins to build the very first new soil where, one day, larger plants may finally take hold. So your patch of moss isn't ruining the ground at all. It is actually quietly healing it. The sixth secret is how to actually read what your moss is saying, because where it grows is a clear message about your yard. Moss is one of the finest natural signs a gardener can learn. First, and most often of all, a carpet of moss is simply telling you there is too much shade. It is telling you the grass there simply cannot get enough sun. Moss also thrives where the ground stays soggy and poorly drained.
So a soft, mossy patch can be quietly pointing to a real drainage problem in the ground below. It often appears where the soil has been packed down hard. In that hard, compacted ground, the grass roots simply cannot breathe or grow. Moss can also be a quiet sign that your soil is quite acidic. Many kinds of grass really dislike sour, acidic soil, but the moss is perfectly content in it. And it frequently marks soil that is simply poor and low in food. So that green patch is reading your yard and reporting back to you. So if you truly do want less moss, the trick is to listen closely to what it is telling you. Let in more light by trimming the branches above it, improve the drainage, or gently loosen the compacted ground. Sweeten sour soil, or feed earth that has grown too poor. Fix that one real underlying condition, and the healthy grass can often return all on its own. But scrape the moss while ignoring the cause, and it will simply come back. The seventh secret is the hidden little world inside the moss. Because a single patch of moss is not really just one simple little plant. It is really a whole miniature forest, quietly teeming with all kinds of tiny life. Down among those soft green leaves lies a secret jungle, and it shelters creatures almost too small for us to see. The most remarkable of all of them is the tiny, lumbering creature called the water bear. These strange, microscopic little animals live out their entire lives within a single patch of moss, and they are among the toughest creatures known to science. They can survive being frozen, dried to dust, and the vacuum of space. Tiny worms, mites, and countless others share that mossy world, and the moss gives every one of them moisture, shelter, and a safe place to live.
It is a thriving little wilderness right there on your ground. And that humble moss quietly does a great deal of good for the wider world as well. Like all green plants, it cleans the air and stores carbon away. It gently holds on to rainwater that might otherwise simply rush away far too fast. And it keeps the air around it gently cool and moist. For so small and humble a plant, it does a great deal of good. It quietly feeds and shelters life, holds the soil together, and softens the falling rain. All from a thin green carpet you once wanted to scrape away. So next time you kneel down, look closely into the moss. You are quietly peering down into one of the very smallest wildernesses on all of Earth. We've uncovered 7 secrets hidden in that soft green carpet, but the final one is the most beautiful reason to leave it be, and it may change how you see the humblest corner of your yard. Here is the 8th and most wonderful secret of them all. That little patch of moss is truly one of the great survivors of the entire living world. It has quietly endured for hundreds upon hundreds of millions of years here on this earth. It outlasted the dinosaurs and countless creatures since. It can dry right down to dust and patiently wait, then return to life again with the rain. It needs no rich soil, no deep roots, and almost no care. It simply drinks in the falling rain and the morning mist, and it quietly carries on. And wherever the ground is hardest and most bare, it appears. It softens the rock, shelters the soil, and shields the earth. It is honestly one of the very toughest, and yet also one of the gentlest, plants alive. In some parts of the world, people have always quietly understood this about the moss. In old gardens, moss is not fought, but lovingly treasured. Whole green moss gardens are tended for their deep, quiet peace. There, the moss is seen as a thing of beauty, calm, and age. It carpets the stones in a soft, ancient, living velvet. And that very same plant is growing in your own backyard. What you saw as a stain on your lawn is a small, ancient marvel. Older than the very hills, tougher than the wildest storm, and yet gentle as a single breath, quietly protecting your soil and asking for almost nothing at all. So the next time you find it in that soft and shady corner, kneel down and look at it with a little more wonder. You are really looking at one of the very oldest living survivors on the whole planet. A patient, gentle, ancient pioneer, quietly healing the very ground beneath your feet. Perhaps it doesn't need to be scraped away after all. And that, in the end, is what your garden has been quietly trying to tell you all along. So before you scrape that green carpet away again this year, pause for a moment and consider what it's really telling you. Listen to its message about the shade, the damp, and the soil, and maybe even leave a little patch of it to gently soften a shady, forgotten corner. Let that ancient survivor protect the ground and quietly thrive. If this changed the way you see your garden, subscribe to What the Garden Knows. Every single week, we learn to read one more secret hidden in plain sight. And if you love the creatures that visit your garden, check out Backyard Wildlife Mind. It's where we explore all the wild lives unfolding right outside your window. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, your garden is always speaking.